I may up on the a site. I'm hoping it's going to be tomorrow, but it could potentially be on Thursday. You can go back to this webinar with your team and go through it with them. And if there are other people who are interested, feel free to share this information with them as well, because I know a lot of people have a lot of the same questions. So that being said, Suzanne.
Hi.
Hey. Suzanne Tai is a third grade teacher in Biddeford, but she is also a Smarter Balanced ambassador, and I'm going to let her explain what that is, how she got to have that title, and we'll begin our presentation.
Hi, everyone. Last year, the NEA sent out an email saying who was interested in becoming teacher ambassadors or working more with them. And I had just applied, and they were just looking for classroom teachers to look for. And so we just had 2 days of training, and then 2 days of I had a great experience talking to other teachers about what Common Core. I was very lucky that in Biddeford we have participated in both the field test and pilot test. Last year we did the field test where we did EA, and this kind of get away what we've learned. Just if you need to contact me, information at the primary school, I'm a great feel free to contact me. Your Smart Balance is just really a small part of Common Core. We're doing in our classroom is really important, and Smart Balance is just one way that
hold on just a minute, Suzanne. I need to go and mute everyone again. Sorry. Just on other people's feedback. Okay. Go.
So I think what we try to do in my district is not focus so much on the test, is that really trying to focus more on classroom instruction, our curriculum, and Common Core. Because when you look at the Common Core, there's nothing in there that nobody really thought to teach before. It's just one small piece of the puzzle. But this was my class after the 4 days of testing. And I had some really tough guys who said, can I go take a nap on the rug? And it was great because it was so quiet. It was never quiet, but it was like silent. So one positive thing that came out of the Smarter Balance test is that it was quiet in my room for a little bit. Some things to do before you test. These are kind of hopefully that people can learn from our mistakes. First, test your technology before loading secure servers 3 days before the test at 6 a.m. in the morning on all the laptop cards. We found out this laptop doesn't work. This one's in a key. This one doesn't have internet. So take the time to do that before. But you need headphones for all the students doing it. People ran out last minute and got them for us. And make sure the headphones are pushed all the way into the jack, because during the test, kids would, I can't hear it, it's not working, it won't let me move on. Well, it was because the headphone wasn't put in all the way. We have to have some use the mouse, some used the touchpad on the laptop. It seems to make a huge difference, but some like the mouse more. It's so important to think about internet. How many classes can test at one time? In my building, we only had one grade level testing, but other buildings had more than one grade level, and bandwidth couldn't handle the whole building testing. So a little thing to talk to your IT person. then the debate when I was down in Charlotte about the use of desktop and iPad. We didn't have enough iPads, but we're not using iPads because they're just too small. But you would a keyboard to do it. But and before you start testing, is that all the open programs have to be closed. It kept kicking us out of the program, and I don't think it's a major concern for older kids, but for third graders, it was putting them in tears because they didn't understand why they couldn't sign in, and mixing all these little hidden programs that are open. So it's important for the teachers to make sure everything is shut down. The test schedule, I'm the most OCD person you have, and to make a schedule because you need to think about social lunch. You need to think about, do you not want to test on a Monday or a Tuesday, Friday? We try to avoid those. You need to think about snow days. We're starting in March. Days. It's really an undertaking to make sure we have laptops, time, who's going to cover what. So it really needs to be planned out.
Hold some moments. I've got to go back and mute some people, unfortunately, because they're clicking in.
You practice tests and the training tests are online, and you really need to have your staff look at that. Even grade and first grade tests, but everything second grade does and first grade does lead into it. The vocabulary, the language, if you start early, they'll be more familiar with it. So there are these, especially apps, this one where they have to lines and connect with us, and it drives me crazy because I can't do it. But it's something that they need to practice, and your staff just needs to see what they're. Because so much what we're to do is how it looks, and because it looks different, it kind of makes people. Because it's set up a double screen. On one side, you'll have the questions, and on the left side, you'll have text, and right side questions, and to know to go back and forth. And the button where they can click to make the screen bigger, and things for them to know how to use. And they really need typing. I think second grade would be a great time to teach them how to type because it's all typing. There's a writing that they have to do in the performance test, but the performance test is writing either an informational, or persuasive, or a narrative piece, and a lot of typing. Let's see.
It's third grade level, so if it's at the third grade level, it's at all levels.
Yeah. So a lot of what I'm saying, some of my art concerns were more third grade specific. I don't think the typing will be as big a issue for the older kids. And then someone signing in, double that beforehand because we got the info from the state, we signed cards for our third graders, and then we saw the numbers were wrong. Have the same number, then 7 other kids would have the same number. So double check, sign in information. What about the website? Is that once they go into the practice test, it will mimic how they sign in so that we see it. That's important for them to see.
Oh, one of the questions I know that people might have at this point is where to get the information, where they're getting the numbers from. And I asked the Department of Education, and that information is actually going to be given to one of the members from your school district the week of December 15th to the 19th. So someone in your district is going to be identified as a test coordinator, and they will get that information for the students.
And with the practice test and the training test, we do it to teach them content. It really for them just to see the format of it. So we really have sit and go through every question.
Mhm.
But we did have them sit, we used computer time, we used the reading block, whenever we could sign out a laptop card, to kind of walk them through so they get to see the format so they're not surprised when they see the test. And like I said, it's online. You can print out paper, the paper, which I'll show you later. And you will be getting pre-teaching materials for the performance task. That emails a link, and we got that 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, and that's meant to introduce the subject area of the performance task. You're supposed to teach that 48 hours before the performance task. So you could do it the day before, you could do it 2 days before, but it does have to be in what they consider a secure teaching environment. It should look just like your normal classroom. And it's scripted, so it tells them what they can say. We had this for third grade, one was about making sandwiches, excuse me, and it was about comparing and contrasting animals. And whatever else you need, they will email it to you. I don't really want you to deviate too much from it, but it's not the secure setting that no one can come in like you in the test. So one thing about the desktops and iPads, with WEA you had a teacher computer that you used to proctor. We use desktops for the teachers because you don't want the computers to go to sleep. So whether it's a desktop or a laptop for the teacher, make sure you turn off the power save. So you don't want to go to sleep in the test because that could interfere with the data and you could lose everything. Well, that's my fear. Every time I go to click a button, I go, I'm going to lose everything. But we have one teacher really good about playing around with it. So really, we have a person who's really good with the technology.
Really.
There's a lot.
I'm still listening to this.
Oh, there's someone talking.
Awful. The audio is awful. I just.
Do you need me to talk? Am I not loud enough?
It is that you're breaking up. And
Right.
if you want to try to get it closer to your,
Better?
yes. That's
Okay.
I'll let you put something more.
Okay. So we spent a lot of time, looking at the test. What I would recommend is that, for the next, say in January, use your PLC team time. Look at the test for any unfamiliar vocabulary. Smarter Balance does not plan to release a vocabulary list. So the vocabulary that they use is universal, but there are little things that might need to be tweaked for your district if it's not something that you use. But we went through it and we looked for vocabulary that we wanted our class to be more familiar with. An example with the performance task, a little boy said, well, I have to draw conclusions. I need drawing tools. I have no crayons. I have no pencils. How can I draw it? He didn't understand what draw conclusion was. When you get to the test, so they'll call it a CAT. So whenever you see CAT in the literature, it's a computer adaptive test. So it's like NWEA. If you get a question correct, it will go higher. If a question wrong, it will go lower. So it should adjust to their ability. Right now, not all the tools are available on the practice test and the test, but most of them are. At this administrative level, but just determine who can have what supports, what occasions, who needs what, because that will all be determined before the test. Timed, and we're going to take it once. I think there was some confusion that we're going to take it more than once, and that's the purpose of the interim assessments, to kind of start testing them beforehand to see if they are. But it has two tests, two parts. We do days. We did non-performance task first, which was a mixture of the multiple choice, short answer, constructive response, and the performance task, which had two parts to it. So performance task, what's important is that some of the questions have more than one answer. Phrases that in my answers are most likely, which outcomes are most probable, least likely, things like that where they have to decide is there more than one answer. And you're in the non-performance task, if they have not completed all the parts, you let them go to the next screen. So sometimes students don't realize that they have to scroll all the way down the screen. I will ready to move on, and they didn't realize that they had missed something. It's also important with the non-performance task is that we found some of the directions were mixed in with the questions, so they do need to read it carefully. Do it in one day. You can take about a 20-minute break before the program will time out, pause the test, and come back another day. And they recommend that not take more than 5 days to do one session. Then performance task, we did that also in one day. Again, you pause it, but we were able to we spent that 20 minutes for them to get up, stretch, bathroom. So if you keep moving the mouse or touching the touchpad, keep it active. So performance task, there'll be one section where they'll be given some information. They might ask to take some notes, and the second part is where they'll be expected to do the work. With this year's third grade was working with graphing. For the ELA, they were asked to write a 5-paragraph research, an informational piece, or opinion piece, or so it's another place where they have a little bit of information, then they have directions, a little bit of information, and then write. Students scrap paper to notes with math or ELA, and then I just destroyed them. They found that easier at third grade, but there is a note-taking pull down that I think older students will be much more comfortable using. So I think working with the practice test and the training test, the performance tasks are also there online, so they get an idea of which is going to work better for your students. So the website, it's not easy to navigate, but there's a ton of information there. You've got all the practice and training tests. You have the achievement level descriptors. To themselves, we did the achievement level and it was a great experience really seeing the range. Where the questions we got last year, they were looking for 4s. They were so hard. But what we saw in October, my kids can answer that. Oh, we can do that. So we felt a whole lot better looking at that. You know, the performance tasks, and there are 2 sets. You have a 2013 and 2014. So you'll practice double training tests that you can print out.
And that's for all of the grade levels.
That's the grade levels. It's the same for the performance tasks and how to score them. And interim assessments should be up in January, and I think we have the date later on in the presentation.
They're on the slide.
Yeah. That's where the rumor came that we would be able to do Smarter Balance more than once, or people misunderstood. Another resource that it is still in development, but it's being developed by classroom teachers around the country, is the digital library. And this materials K through 12. So grade levels that are not being tested, there are resources there. And if we have time, I'll even take you to the digital library. But it's getting time. I think there's only around 500 resources there. I've been collecting but it does take time, and it's a process where they're reviewed by other teachers who are teacher ambassadors or have elected to do for Smarter Balance. But it's a long process, so it's going to take us time to get really good material. It's a great resource for grade levels below the group tested or the ninth, and I think are not being tested. So it's kind of something in the middle for them also. And Maine is done, so we will have access.
Just so that you know, there was a question earlier, Suzanne, you weren't on yet, about the Smarter Balance. Some of you already have your login information for the digital library. If you do not, Beth Dodge, and her information is at the bottom of the screen. Beth is the person you need to email and tell her your information. Just send it to her. If there's more than one of you in your school that needs that information, put it in an Excel sheet. They need your first name, your last name, and your email address. And Bethany will email you the information that you need to get onto the digital library.
I have found that it really has been helpful to do that. And then it's something that's just going to take time to process. Okay. So we have an estimated testing time. I think people are worried, you know, how long will it take? What's the amount of time? This is, I think, pretty accurate if you include the to sign in. For it's going to go wrong, and I think you need to be prepared. That's the day the internet's going to crash. That day that all the laptops need to charge them. Before we did WEA fall, the laptop cards had been unplugged all summer. So WEAs, and they had no bad, and they had no charge. So it's things like that that you need to be prepared for. We called the morning of the test, 6:30 a.m., and somebody answered us. So they during the testing cycle for someone to talk to you. Again, my experiences was third grade. It took us about close to 2 hours to do performance, not performance, but putting in signing in time, a break, and getting them started. The performance task, tennis, it was either they took the full 2 hours plus, or they then got frustrated and kind of made it their role. But I think times are pretty accurate. And the 30 minutes, so that gives you about 3.5 hours. Then the 30 minutes for the in-class activity. 4 hours for the ELA, and that was pretty accurate. And if you look, most of the grade spans, it's between 3 to 4 hours for each session. And with the non-performance task in 1 day, and the performance task. What would make things a little easier if you're using laptop, make sure everything is set up for them to sign in. They come in, and that'll just save you a lot of time, whether you're using laptops or going into a computer lab.
I really want to stress, because this is a question I probably get asked more than any, is specifically on time. You're right, it is an untimed test. You're exactly right, it is not a timed test. However, you need to have a roundabout time of what you could potentially expect when scheduling different groups go in and do the test.
So always to add an extra half hour, because there's always that kid who needs a little bit more time. And rather overestimate than for, if someone's rushed, they're not going to give it all, they're going to stress out. So I think it's better to overestimate. On these times for this were pretty accurate. This you'll see when you print out the test, a question will have a box like this for it. So number, which is item number, the span. These are great for your staff. And where Smart Balance kind of clumped a couple standards together that has things to do, that has something in common. Then they have a target. Each claim has an assessment target. More details based on the content and depth of knowledge. And if you're familiar with the depth of knowledge, I think this is where I spend a lot of my time in my classroom. Depth of knowledge, 1, 2, 3, or 4. A lot of people working with Marzano's right now, and I think it's a good match. But depth of knowledge, 1, basic recall. The 4 questions are really hard, but our teaching needs to change. Item is linked to a specific standard, and then the evidence statement. But if you start looking at depth of knowledge now, at when teaching in my classroom, what depth of knowledge am I going to? Be more valuable, I think, than spending time going practice test, question by question, drilling the kids. So I'm going to take you right to the website. So
And this is where,
laptop.
no, I was just going to say, this is where, when I sent my email yesterday, if you had a second computer or laptop device available, you'll be able to do this along with Suzanne.
So I find the Smarter Balance website has a ton of information. It can be difficult to navigate, and always change it a little bit, and then you'll think, it was yesterday, where did it go? So they are constantly updating the materials. So you've resources here. There are handouts that you can print for parents, frequently asked questions. There's a student section, that teachers, administrators, but with Smarter Balance assessments. So here's information on the field test, practice and training tests, sample items, the interim assessments. They're not yet, but there's some information about them. You've got achievement level setting, more information about the computer adaptive and the technology. So that's a great place for your tech people to go. But we're going to go to the second one, which is practice training tests. You scroll down, big box that says take the practice and training tests. Here, the first one, you've got, it's a data classroom activities and scoring guides, and documents. This first link is going to take you to all of the stuff that you can print out paper-wise. I'm just going to take you there real quick, but we'll look at it more later. So here you have everything, the classroom activities that we did, the preaching, you've got scoring guides along with the practice tests. Starting 3, you've got 2013, 2014. So you have all of these materials available to you. And then performance test writing rubrics. So I'll take you back. If you scroll down a little bit further, when we signed in, this is where the teachers went, to the TA practice and training site. I don't know if that will change once they lie fully, but this is where we came to sign in, and information looks slightly different from the students. But you have your staff and students click on the student interface. In for the secure browser, this is exactly what it looks like. They'll have a confirmation code, a number, and then you'll get a session ID. You sign in, and I'm start moving a little faster because I'm noticing it's 4:03 and I want time for questions. Silly, make sure they select a grade. We kept going, we can't get in. Selected a grade. Yes. You've got the training test is a grade span. So it's 3 or 5. If you sign in higher, you probably would have 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
The practice test at the performance test. I'm just going to take you real quick into the practice test just so you can see. Here the settings administrators will choose will be. It's yes, this is me. Again, everything that they can have is on, and there are my text. You have to check the sound icon. They click yes. There's where I think our computer teacher spent a lot of time just teaching them how to navigate the screen. Zoom out. I got stuck once you zoomed out. It's frustrating to the students. So I have a calculator available. They can pause, move forth, and then do the test. So it really breaks it down for them. So I'm going down real quick. It's a great place for your computer teachers to help your students, and then begin the test.
They're available to all of them. You've heard the term universal tool. That's those universal tools.
Okay, what I meant about that split screen, and through some of our students a little bit. So your questions on the right side. So they're really used to like one question per screen if you think of NWEA. So they have to read all the passage on the left before they're prepared to answer the questions. There's a little arrow with a plus sign at the top. If they click that, it makes it larger. And I know it's a little thing, but our third graders just didn't quite get that, and it just frustrated them. And then, so just have each question. So they're good at highlighting two deals that best support. You have part A, part B. Confused kids, when you look at it, it kind of checks it, even though they haven't checked it, so the kids thought, oh, I checked that. Well, it goes gray. It hasn't been checked yet. And where they have to click and drag, we had issues last year with it not wanting to click and drag, but this moving much better than last year. We've got a couple, multiple choice, moving around, being more interactive, and then have a short response. What inference can you make? And pick three choices, one dialogue important, another short multiple choice. So like all the answers, when you text, they do warning you haven't answered all the questions. So I aspect. Then you can just keep going. If you click save, it reminds you when you're done with the test, save this, do you want to go back and look at it?
And then the students can do.
Yes. And when it's done, it asks you, do you want to go back and check? And students are really good about going back and checking everything. Others are, I'm done. That's where, say, NWEA, you release them into the next session. So with the paper and pencil, that's another thing. You don't necessarily have to go computer away. Smalls is offering the option of paper pencil for the first 3 years, I believe. Our district just decided to do it because paper pencil is not adaptive.
Yeah, and they're not encouraging it.
Not, but it is an option if you don't have the technology. But it's there for you if you just can't get this year. But it's the sooner you get to the computer, it's the way things are going. So with the resources and documentation, you practice writing test user guides, you have the classroom administration user guide, take you into the third grade test. So here's the third grade math. So I have the first question, number the claim, the domain, target, and a lot of information in the teaching, the scoring guide. You've got knowledge 1, you've got content, and so click all of the shapes that are quadrilateral. Score this one. And it shows you the rubric point they correctly identifies quadrilateral. Every question in the practice test has been scored, and you know what score is. So here's a bar graph. Any tool, it looks like a calculator, but not. And I never understood why they've used this, but this is how they will type in their numbers. So the answer was 43. They would type in 43. The box here is a fraction. So if you want to create a fraction or something. So I shouldn't plug, but I would, I think it is 10 marks. The has this to some of their online stuff, and they're free. So it says correctly, the student enters the correct number of students. Oh, this is, if you come across this problem online, this is the one that gives me fits, where they have to add points and draw and connect because it's just, I just did. But this is the hardest one for 3-5 training materials to students how to use, where they have to make the point and then the lines. Give you an exemplar, and they're going to give you, but these are all just 1 point. Fractions were huge in 3rd grade, so if there's anyone there who's teaching 3rd grade, fractions. I started day 1. It says 1. Find one that would have a little bit more information.
The grades have, they have a practice test with this type of scoring guide so that people have the opportunity to see what does one look like as well as what do the exemplars look like.
Yes, so you can pick 3rd grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, so you have all the grade levels. So at the bottom you do have the writing rubric. Performance tasks. This is just so it's just an idea of what they're looking for, and they just sit down and perturbation. I'm pretty specific with bricks, without coming out and saying this is what you should write. This is, but they're clear, easy to read. I think while I'm at the website, is there anything else you haven't shown them?
No, that's pretty good. Nothing else to stress more than anything, what to do to get your kids and help them be ready to take this test. Get them on those practice tests.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to say to not take a test, want to take a test. Sit and put them in front of this practice test all day, bit by bit. It's little doses because it will overwhelm them. And just a little bit every day, I think, is much more effective than trying to cram it the week before you get to the Smarter Balance test. So you've got a practice test and the printable practice test. They can really look at the whole screen. So we both. We put on the computer, and we also gave them a couple of the paper pieces. I think we're ready for you, Holly.
Okay. Let me get this back here. Just some questions that have to do with preparing your students and others not so much, but I definitely needed to get the information to you. Some important dates to note. They're expecting the interim comprehensive assessments to be available around the 6th of January. The assessment blocks around the 27th. MEA, when I start putting things out from the MPA about this assessment, you're going to see me call it what is being referred to by the Department of Ed, which is the MEA for balanced. It's not a different test, it's the same test, just a different name. That whole testing window is March 16th to the 29th, to 16 to May 29th. So you actually have quite a bit of time. It doesn't seem like a lot of time, but you do have a little bit of time to get this assessment done. And then there was also a question about the SAT. I know that has nothing to do with Smarter Balance, but it's going to be an optional SAT, or excuse me, the SAT is optional, but it's going to be offered at schools on a Wednesday, and the state will pay for it this one time. And that has to be on April 15th with a makeup date of April 29th. I want to make sure that you had that information too. One of the questions that people have also been asking, specific to what are some of the instruments that the students need to be able to have in order to access this assessment. These are universal requirements. This came straight off of the Smarter Balance website. I did a straight cut and paste. One of the biggest questions I get asked, can I do this on the iPad? The answer is yes, you can do it on the iPad. You need to make sure that you have a keyboard that can attach to the iPad, simply because if you don't, you won't have required amount of screen space, like Suzanne showed you with those split screens. If you add a keyboard on top of that, they're going to be able to access what they need to see. Headphones, do need headphones at all of the grade levels. That goes right up through the high school level as well. They don't necessarily have to have a volume on the headphones themselves, because smarts will actually have a volume control that the children can use. So you have to have the headphones. They don't necessarily have to be volume controlled. As far as a pointing device, people say, do we have to have mice? That's entirely up to you and what works for your students. They have to have something that can move, but if it's a mouse, it's great. If it's a touch pad, touch screen, whatever kids are used to, go with that. Now to just the specific questions that some of you had submitted to me prior to the presentation. One of them was, do you know of any other trainings that are going to be taking place? The answer is yes. These are some 4 Department of Ed regional trainings are going to be taking place. I know the specific dates, I know the specific places, and I know as of yesterday, you are able to register going through the portal. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit, but you'll be able to register for these trainings right online starting now. So there's a lot of writing here, and I won't read to you, especially where you will have access to the presentation. One of the questions was, how and when do we code students who need accommodations? Those are specifically to the students, ELL students, 504 students, students who have IEPs. You're going to be able to start coding those students with the accommodations as soon as you get your student IDs, which is going to be the week of December 15th to the 19th. As soon as your test coordinator gets that information, that person will be then able to go in and start coding the students. Now, for the kids who have, who are able to have this too, and of course I'm blanking on the name, you've got your, Suzanne, your universal tools, and then stations. You've got accommodation that all students can access prior to, and forgive me for blanking on the name of it right now. I can't believe I'm doing that. Designated supports. Designated supports. Yeah, designated supports. Some people, well, what's the difference between a designated support and an accommodation? Accommodation are specific to students who have IEPs, 504s, or ELL students. Designated supports can be given to any student as long as the child has been identified by an educator or team that need that additional support to be successful with the assessment. Now, I want to show you this. I'm not sure if you're able to see it very well. The Smarter Balanced Assessment Usability, Accessibility, and Accommodations Guideline. I call it the cheat sheet of Smarter Balance, a cheat sheet that's 39 pages. This has been one of the most valuable resources for me, not only in preparing for the presentation today, but also in answering one-on-one conversations with people or questions that they have. So again, if you don't want to download the entire thing for Smarter Balance, don't. The Accommodations Guideline has been a huge help. If you're stuck on whether or not a student should receive some sort of designated support or accommodation, that top link up at the top, well, it's almost like a worksheet to help you decide whether or not a student should receive a designated support or an accommodation. The tool instructions, the instructions on how to fill that out in the link below that. Some people have specifically asked about, well, what are the accommodations that we can give? They're in that guideline cheat sheet, but I also put a link that will take you specifically to the ELA accommodations. What guidance for the performance tasks are available? Like Suzanne showed you, the team materials will be sent to you just a couple of days, probably before you're expected to take the assessment, so that you can start your pre-teaching at time. How and when are teachers getting the 4-hour online module completed for staff to be able to give the alternate assessment? Suzanne, why don't you take this one and explain what your group did?
What is that we meet once a week as a team, and we meet once a week for a PLC. So that really gave us almost 2 hours every week. I had a special ed block. Our ed teachers also met to talk about, how are they going to, but it's just kind of finding time here. If you have the fun of maybe even getting a couple subs, the whole group can work together. It's important that your grade level teams work together, include special ed with, or maybe one special ed person per team, so that they're not working in isolation. But it's being really, and I find doing it a little time because it can overwhelm some people. But we start meetings in our PLC time.
Done it at this point in time and start. This is as good a time as any.
I know you start because you have questions. You're not stumbling at 6:30, the day the test is starting, to figure out why to do something, because that happened to us more than yeah, but just be prepared. Something's going to go wrong.
Then our next question, how are class rosters being set up in the online system for each school, grade level, and classroom? Again, the week of December 15th to 19th, the state is going to give your test coordinator for your district. And who is that person? I don't know the answer to that. I know someone asked me before. I'll ask the department and get that information back to all of the members of the MPA, so that you will have access to that information. Once you get that list, then it's up to the principals. If they give the information to the teachers, you can make sure that the numbers match the name that comes up. And then if I remember right, and you can maneuver which students go in which groups to get tested, correct?
So, and we also had the same numbers for the ELA and the math. Mm-hmm. So we had cards ready for them to go, and just things like that save you a lot of time.
Okay. And I just got information that the designee is the superintendent, and otherwise and just read that to me. The designee is the superintendent until he or she signs up a coordinator. They have till the 15th, and if they haven't done so, then the superintendent is automatically. Thank you very much, Don. We're running out of time, so I want to make sure I get through at least the questions that were posed ahead of time. How much PD is reasonable to do, or should we do with teachers, and how much practicing with students? Suzanne has answered that. You know, having staff take the test and be familiar with it, give students the opportunity to do the practice online a little bit each day. We'll just help them be prepared. What are some of the common mistakes? Suzanne, again, has also been answering those kind of along the way. Just making sure that not having all the staff and students familiar with how the test looks online. They're familiar with it, they're not going to be as successful. Again, not having all the materials and technology tested before the testing day. Definitely make sure you test it out. Of course, there are going to be glitches, but if you test it out, you might be able to get rid of some of those issues beforehand. They download all of the secure servers before the test. That's something you absolutely can do before the test, and make sure that all of the servers are up to date. The proctor turns off the screensaver. Yes, the answer is no. Smart is not going to be released vocabulary list, but as you go through the practice test with your students, you'll get a good idea of what's being asked. For the students to take the test more than once, again, Suzanne answered that question. No, you can with the interim assessments. You can go in and take them, but you're not able to do that on the actual assessment. Great question. How will the school scores be judged against the state F grading? If you don't know, I'm very happy to tell you that there will not be a letter grade given for this year's assessment. Nancy Godfrey was wonderful and came and presented at the Maine Principal Association's conference, and she told the group that was there that this year is going to be a baseline year. There will not be a grade, a letter grade associated with this coming back from the assessment. How does it deal with the monitor status and SIPS ratings? As of right now, again, this is a baseline year. Offerings on scoring provided before the testing begins. I answered this one. I'm not aware of any, but if some become available, I'll definitely make sure that the membership knows, and we can either set up another webinar or I'll let you know of those trainings. Will the students get their scores immediately? The answer again is no, primarily because of the performance tasks. Those are going to be scored by an actual human, so therefore it needs a little bit of time. When will we have those scores? I'm not exactly sure when we'll get the scores. And can parents opt out? I actually took this as a direct quote from the Maine Department of Ed. Never opt out of a state-required assessment. You would only excuse through special considerations, and that form had to be individually submitted, reviewed, and then determined by the DOE whether or not they would accept that opt-out. Universal support's easy to run on most laptops. They should be. Do performance tests have to be given on 2 separate consecutive days? There's a lot of writing here that I won't read to you. It's simply a cut and paste again from the Smarter Balanced User Guide, and Suzanne did a really nice job explaining that it should be done on one day, but you can take a break in between. It's embedded in the test, but the largest piece again is with the performance test. How do our school and students, again, the test coordinator, if they designated or the superintendent on the week of the 15th, will get the students' numbers. Then whoever is designated would then be able to go in to the test information distribution engine and make sure that all the information is there, the accommodations and whatnot. And I want to be very mindful of time. I have 2 minutes. I need to finish all the testing in a 2-week window. Absolutely not. You have from the 15th until May 29th to take that test. Does everyone in the district have to do it at the same time? No. you don't. That decision is made at the district level and at the building level. High schools, I asked this specifically to the Maine Department of Ed. There are some high schools that want to test students in grade 9 through 12 rather than just grade 11, and what would be the best practice. Their advice is to use the practice and training tests because they're open to every grade, but only grade 11 is specific to that level of the Common Core. So they're welcome to practice as much as you want them to. Great resources. One I want to point out more than anything, and then I am going to have to wrap us up. Maine Smarter Balanced Portal. It's the third link down. It is there. It's up and running. Nancy informed the membership at the conference of this Maine portal that's specific to Smarter Balance. And I checked it out yesterday. It's pretty user friendly, and even though there's a lot of information there, it gives you a lot of shortcuts. So if looking specific for practice tests, what does the administrator have to do to get ready? What do the students need to do to get ready? There are specific links that you can go to straight from that site. So I highly, highly advise that you check that link out, and not only check it out, continuously go back to that link because they're constantly updating it. There's our information. You've got me, you've got Susan. I also put Nancy Godfrey. She's the acting assessment coordinator for the Department of Ed, and she's a really great resource to help us out as well. Now, I know that because of time, it is 4:30, and I promised I would get you all on the road. There were quite a few questions that we did not get to because you've been putting them up as we've talked, and I apologize for taking the time, but I want to thank Suzanne specifically for putting the PowerPoint presentation together, for your experience, and for all of your help throughout this entire process. And and your kitty. And for those of you who sent in questions, I promise you I will get those answers to all the membership. So if you are registered for this webinar, you will get a copy of the responses, but the entire membership will get a copy of not only the question, but the answers as well. So I hope this was helpful for all of you. There's going to be an evaluation and a survey that's going to be sent out tomorrow morning. If you please would, if you wouldn't mind filling out that survey, I'm going to be using that information to make the future webinars efficient and as productive as possible. So thank you very much. Again, apologize for the sound not being 100% at the beginning. I think it did kind of work out near the end there, which is good. But this will be archived and put on the MPA website so that you can always go back and use it as a resource. And remember, we're together. The whole state, we're working together, and the MPA is here to support you. So thank you very much. Drive safely and enjoy your night.